Hey, warm and friendly hello, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We're going to be joined at segment number 2 by Rocco Miller, who does such great work over at Bracketeer.org, and we're going to be chatting with him about the fact that we are going to be seeing a lot of these smaller conference tournaments get started. We have to chat with him about the whole Miami of Ohio debate. Does he think, because he is a bracketologist, he also does a ton with scheduling as well. So we're going to be talking about the Miami of Ohio schedule, if he believes that they are going to be able to get into the NCAA tournament or not. So we're certainly going to be chatting about that. And we were also talking about UNC Wilmington. It was happening, the interview was, while they were up 15 points, they end up losing the game outright. But we are going to have a good quality chat about that, some of the mid-majors that we are looking for this week that both of us think might be able to be feisty if they make the NCAA tournament, and so much more. And then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis out of a game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday, as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we all fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. So, as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Well, I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today. We had ourselves a great day of college basketball on Sunday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Another under for Michigan State, as this looked like it was going to be a very overwhelming game after it was 45-37 at the half, but 77-64. Michigan State, they win, they cover against Indiana. Now 17 unders to 12 overs thus far this season for Michigan State. And for Indiana, they put 2 points up on the board in the final 6+ minutes of play. Second straight game in which our offense just completely deteriorated in the second half for Michigan State. They go 12 of 24 from three-point range. Jackson Kaler led the way with 21 points, 13 rebounds. Jeremy Fears, 9 assists, 21 points of his own. And for Indiana, 10 of 35 from three. Lamar Wilkerson goes 5 of 14 from three-point range with 29 points. But Indiana had a hearty 0 points off the bench. They lose a rebound battle, 35-27. They do win the turnover battle, 9-7. But not great there from Indiana, to say the least. And then out there in the Big Ten as well, Ohio State, a game that they very much needed. They get it against Purdue, 82-74. The final. Purdue against the spread this season, they are now just 13-16. So it's been less than savory for them, as Purdue has been in the skids recently. They go 11 of 29 from three. Braden Smith was able to put in their 20 points, 7 assists, and just 2 turnovers in. Fletcher Lawyer, 5 of 9 from 3, 15 points. Between the two of them, they go 8 of 17 from three-point range. The rest of the team goes about 3 of 11 from three-point range, and for them, they got only 5 points off the bench. Meanwhile, for Ohio State, they go 9 of 24 from the outside, and they sink their free throws. 25 of 32 at the free throw line. Ohio State was able to win the rebound battle, 36 of 29 as well. And John Mobley, how big is it that he's back? He was dealing with injury. He was their top scorer in this game, 5 of 11 from three-point range, 21 big points. So they find a way to persevere, get the job done. It's all sorts of bad for Memphis right now. Memphis, they lose to East Carolina 84-68, the final. I believe it's now 7 straight losses for Memphis, might be 6, but 5 of 16 from three-point range. Offense has been deplorable this year. They were down 44-30 at the half. They are now 7-9 in the American Conference. Charlotte is ahead of them in the American Conference standings, and East Carolina has been awful from three, went 9 of 18 from three-point range. So yeah, not great to say the least out there. And if you're looking at the American, your best team against the spread thus far this season has been Wichita State. I'm doing this as they're wrapping up an absolute butt-kicking of UTSA. Meet the Roadrunners. We'll see if they're able to cover that number or not, but they entered into the day 18-10 against the spread, and speaking of those Roadrunners, they entered in the day 9-17 against the spread, so not great to say the least with the win. East Carolina, they're now 11-17 against the spread, but if you've been looking at more of the totals within the American, and we had some funky bunch games that happened on Sunday, you've been able to get a lot of unders with the UAB Blazers. 11 overs to 17 unders. They get held down by North Texas. They do their part with the total, but 62-58. North Texas goes on the road after being down by 7 at the half, and they get the job done for North Texas. 6 of 17 from three-point range. UAB did have Chance Westbury supply 17 points, but UAB 13 out of 20 at the free throw line. They play even up on the rebound battle, 35-30. 35, but lost the turnover battle 12-8. So North Texas, they go on the road. They find a way to be able to get the job done out there. South Florida absolutely holds down Tulane. This looked like it was going to fly over the total. You had a 49-38 first half. Tulane, they lose the second half 41-24, 90-62. South Florida gets a big giant win in this one. As for South Florida, how about 25 points out of Wes Enos? He goes 5 of 10 from 3-point range. South Florida wins the turnover battle 18-9. They win the rebound battle 43-32, so they're starting to dominate some of these games. And for Tulane, 11 overs, 16 unders, and a push thus far this season. Charlotte has been a good over team. They're up to now 17 overs, 10 unders, and a push. You needed overtime to be able to get this over, though, against Florida Atlantic, because this game died in the second half, but you were able to get that overtime 77-76. Florida Atlantic, they get the win, but they do not get the cover. They have a deal with an injury to their top scorer, Devin Vanterpool. He was out once again in this game, and neither team shot it well from three. Charlotte, 8 of 31 from three, 6 of 24 for Florida Atlantic, but Florida Atlantic, they win the rebound battle 41-37, the turnover battle 10-8, and Cannon Carlisle, the Stanford transfer, he was able to come in there, give you 19 points. So they do find a way to be able to persevere, get the job done out there. If you've been looking at the Metro Atlantic this far this season, yeah, you've been getting a whole bunch of unders in that conference, as every single team in the conference has played more unders than overs thus far this season. Your top over team is actually Niagara, with 14 overs and 15 unders, and for Niagara, ironically enough, they were in action against Merrimack. They played an over, and Merrimack 73-66. They get the win, but no cover. As for Merrimack, 11 of 27 from 3-point range, and Niagara 7 of 18 from 3-point range. So that was a little bit of good, clean family fun out there. Your top under team, by the way, out there in the Metro Atlantic, Canisius, 8 overs, 21 unders. They were able to get the cover against Quinnipiac. They do not get the outright win. As for Quinnipiac, they do find a way to be able to weasel this one out, 67-63. The final after they were down a point at the half, 5 of 20 from 3-point range for Quinnipiac, 6 of 26 for Canisius. Brian Nadanja off the bench, 17 points. They had senior day, and for Canisius, I don't think that they're eligible for the Metro Atlantic tournament. I know that only the top few go, and they are not one of those teams, so that's a little bit rough for them, to say the least. Want to talk about rough? Maryland. They lose to Rutgers 69-65, the final in this one, and neither of these teams have been great against the spread, but for Maryland, man, they are now 13-16 against the spread. They have won just 11 games outright this season, and Rutgers wins this game despite going 4 of 17 from 3, because Maryland 6 of 28 from 3-point. For Rutgers, they do go 19 of 23 at the free throw line, and Rutgers wins this game despite losing the rebound battle 50-26, because Maryland 19 turnovers to Rutgers 6. That's just bad coaching right there. Like, man, that was not great, to say the least, for Maryland, and this was not great for Illinois Chicago, UIC, who's been able to cover a lot of spreads here in Missouri Valley Conference play, and it's been a rough year for the Sycamores of Indiana State. In terms of a straight-up perspective, I will say against the spread, they're actually 16-12-1 against the spread, 79-63. Indiana State, their 4th conference win. Again, they're covering spreads, though. You've got Camp Wagner, who supplied 25 points in this game. Indiana State went into inferno mode, 14 out of 29 from 3-point. They do lose the turnover battle 17-15, but for UIC, they go just 2 of 15 from 3-point. They win the rebound battle 33-28, but when you go just 2 of 15 from 3-point and your opponent makes 14 threes, yeah, you know how that game is going to be going. For Belmont, they have been one of your better mid-major teams in all of college basketball, but they get punked in the second half against Illinois State. Belmont got off to a really nice lead in the first half. Illinois State, they persevere in the second half, 81-74. The final, Belmont goes 11 of 26 from 3-point, 12 of 27 for the Redbirds, and they made their free throws, 19 of 23 at the charity stripe. For Belmont, they've got one of the best sharpshooters in the country, Tyler Lundblade, 17 points, 5 of 11 from 3-point, but not enough in this game, as Belmont, they've been 17-12-1 against the spread thus far this season, and after a rough against the spread start to the season, Illinois State now 17-13 against the spread. And in terms of totals out there in the Missouri Valley Conference, I'm going to talk about this with Rocco in the next segment. Lots of unders typically in Arch Madness, but that said, you've got Belmont, who's now 18 overs to 12 unders with this over. Drake has been a good over team. They've been up to 17 overs to 12 unders, but in their game against Northern Iowa, a team that's been really making games slogs, they were unable to get a whole heck of a lot going there. As for the Drake, they fall in this game 75-53, so you're able to get the under. And for Northern Iowa, they go 10 of 25 from 3-point. Drake, 9 of 37 from 3-point range. It was clearly not falling for them, and they just kept hoisting them up. For Drake, they lose the turnover battle 15-6, so that was a little bit less than tremendous for them, and Drake just has not been able to cover spreads this far this season as well. They're now 9-20 against the spread. Ryder, they were your worst against the spread team in action on Sunday, 7 7-18-1 against the spread. They were up against Siena and they lose 76-61 the final. This was a closing number in a lot of places that was right around about 14.5. They had opened up at 16.5. So if you took the opener with Ryder, you got there. If you took the close, you didn't quite get there, as Ryder 6-22 from 3-point range. They will not be partaking in the Metro Atlantic tournament, so their season's now done, so we are unable to fade them anymore moving forward. A little bit of a somber day there, but that said, we are going to be able to fade a little bit more LaSalle, who they were exploring a cover, and they got one against Davidson. That by a count of 71-64. LaSalle has been a very rough offensive team, and they're just 13-15 against the spread. Davidson has been a bit of an up-and-down team. They're now 11-14-1 against the spread. Robert Blums was able to supply 17 points in this game, so he was able to help out the cause a little bit. And then you did have Rice all over Temple go Owls against the other Owls, 80-74 the final. So that was another interesting game that happened out there. And then if you want a team that's been really not good for you thus far this season, Evansville, the Purple Aces, they lose to Southern Illinois. This by a count of 81-67 the final. And this is a rare over for Southern Illinois. He's been one of the best under teams in all of college basketball. For Evansville, they now fall to 13-16 against the spread. And for Southern Illinois, they just have been a rough three-point shooting team. That is a big reason why they're at 9 overs to 21 unders thus far this season. But Prince Algibi supplied a double-double, 14 points, 12 rebounds, and Southern Illinois an uncharacteristic 9-22 from three-point range out of them. And then you've had UNC Wilmington do a great job in terms of covering spreads all season long. They've been a rock-solid team, but they had a rough second half against Charleston. A Charleston team that has been very resurgent, 18-11 against the spread for them. Now this season, Wilmington 14-11-2 against the spread. For Charleston, they were down at 1.15 points in this game, down 35-23 at the half. They outscored UNC Wilmington in the second half, 56-41, 79-76. Charleston gets the job done. Again, I was doing my interview with Rocco Miller thinking, UNC Wilmington, they're going to go to 26-4. They do not do that as they let go. They're open the second half. Charleston, they go 10-26 from three-point range, which for their standards is very, very good. And for Wilmington, they dominated the boards. They win the rebound battle 47-28, lost that turnover battle 15-6. And on the side of Charleston was one Mr. Jalen Counter with 23 points, 7 assists. And if you're looking trend-wise at what we're getting in college basketball right now, it's been an unders and an underdog season thus far. The unders sitting at 50.8%, 2,604 unders to 2,522 overs. Meanwhile, the underdogs, they're hitting at about 51.4%, 2,635 and 2,489 against the spread. And if you look at the last 7 days in college basketball, things have been very much to the under, 147 overs to 175 unders, so over 54% hit rate to the under, and underdogs are hitting at about 51%, 165 and 157 against the spread. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's where we're all getting trend-wise. Coming next, about if we do chat it up with our good friend Rocco Miller, Bracketeer.org, right here on Coast to Coast with myself, JT Toppin, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Seats with myself, Greg Eaps-Peters, and now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It's always great to be joined by this man, as I have the luxury of talking to one of the best people on the topic of what we've all been buzzing about the last few days, Miami of Ohio. If they go undefeated in the regular season, are they going to be able to make the postseason, what have you? There are a lot of people are giving opinions that may or may not be great. There are some people are very informed on the topic. There are some that are not. This man is as informed as it gets. brackets because he helps out a lot of these teams with their scheduling. He does a great job with his bracketology over at Bracketeer.org. He is tremendous over at Basket Under Review, where he's giving a Team of the Week award to every single conference, every week. You get a team that gets a Team of the Week award, so that's amazing. He does a mid-major show on the Field of 68. Like, this man wears about 17 hats. It's the old Dennis Gates song of he's got 6 jobs and somehow, some way he's not tired. I'm not sure how, but he always joins me for this podcast, always lends great insights. It's Rocco Miller, who you're able to follow on the old Twitter /X at his first and last name, Rocco Miller, and then the number 8 all together. And Rocco, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Wow, Greg, I don't think I could have said all that the way you did. I'm honored to be on with you. What you do on a daily basis is incredible to me. Doing a podcast about every single game, every single day, I feel like is harder, but maybe you're built for that and I'm built for this. So it's a perfect match here when we get the chance to convene. Thanks again for having me on the show. Excited to talk to you about Miami, Ohio, Stephen F. Austin, and whoever else you want to talk about.
Absolutely. We will lead off with Miami of Ohio, but there's so many other great mid-major teams that you and I both love because on this podcast, it doesn't matter what conference you're betting in, you're able to make money on all these games. So we love all of them, but obviously the big talking point here over the last few days, the Bruce Pro comments were coming out about Miami of Ohio. Everyone's buzzing about them with their comeback win on Friday over Western Michigan. And how do we gauge this Miami of Ohio team right now that is 29-0, but a lot of people don't know if they're going to be able to make the NCAA tournament, and you've been a big advocate for teams stepping up, being able to play some tough competition. I think we both agree. Obviously, the non-conference schedule, very, very weak to say the least for Miami of Ohio. So how do you take a look at their candidacy for an at-large bid if they do not win the MAC tournament?
Well, I think the easy answer here, and I've simplified it the best I can, I talked about this on After Dark a couple nights ago with the Field of 68 guys, is the magic number that would make me feel pretty lock solid is 29 Division I wins. Right now, they're 26-0 against Division I. They have 2 games left to go. Of course, they have a home game coming up. They finish at their rival, Ohio, next weekend, and then they go to Cleveland from there. So there's one scenario where they go 28-0, and I think if they do that, regardless of losing in the first Cleveland game, which would make them 28-1 against Division I, everybody else on TV will say they're 31-0, but in the eyes of the committee, they're just looking at that Division I record, especially for this particular piece of precedent. There's never been a team to win 29 Division I games and be left out. And that's the one thing where it's like, okay, if one committee member or another gets stuck on this team evaluation, you can easily convince that person that we're not going to make an unprecedented misstep here and leave this team out. So that's why I start to feel good there, because I do feel like the majority of the committee room will be well aware of that. It gets brought up all the time when we have teams like this. We had it a couple of years ago in 2022 with Murray State. We had it not too long before that with the Buffalo and the Wofford, great teams.
Stephen F. Austin, had they not won the Southland a few years ago, I think that they were at 29 or 32.
They were, but they played a lot of non-division ones as well, and that got clarified by the committee. So I'd have to go back and double check that. But you're right. That's another example. But there has been teams where you look back at it, they had 28 Division One. Of course, you had Coastal Carolina, I think in 2012. You had multiple St. Mary's teams back before the net that was getting left at the altar also for having poor schedules. And so that's when Randy Bennett started fixing the St. Mary's schedule. In this case, I think we now have more tools for this committee. The WAB got introduced last year. Obviously, it's something they're pushing hard this year with the way the NCAA has put their own spin on it and has their fingerprints all over their own version of it. And the fact that the top 40 all got in last year. Well, right now, this morning, after yesterday's games on Saturday night, they were 32 in the WAB. They'll probably be right around there on Monday as well. So, they take a loss, they'll go backwards somewhat, like even if they went down. And we can look at that too, just so I give the audience a good idea. The Wins Above Bubble tool, just for the audience, is a basic scoring accumulation system on a daily basis to where when you win a game, you accumulate more points, or at least a decimal point or two if it's a bad game, bad opponent. And if you lose, if it's a bad loss, you go way backwards, like almost an entire point. If it's a bad loss, if it's a team that's really, really strong, like if you lose at Duke, you're going to get punished by a very little amount of decimal points. But no matter who you play, as long as you play a game, you're either going up or down. And that's kind of the simplistic part about the tool. And it's also designed to where only around 40 to 45 teams by the end of the season should finish above sea level, which is 0.00. So 300 20 teams or so will finish below zero in the actual decimal point. They'll be in the negatives. And right now, Miami, Ohio, as we sit here during this conversation on Sunday, they're 32nd in the country at a 2.21. Like, even if they lose these next two games, Greg, they probably lose close to a full point for each. They would still be above zero, which means they're still above the bubble. I think that's really important for the public to understand, because I think some of these voters, like half of them, don't know exactly what they're doing or what this tool means. But what it means is, right now, even if they took that decimal point hit, they would still be above teams like Auburn and Indiana, and they'd be next to VCU and New Mexico and Ohio State. So there's still a good chance they're going to Dayton and then the first four. So that's why I think if they finish undefeated and they only take one loss in Cleveland, which that's the most you could lose in a tournament, is going to be a safe landing spot for them to at least be in the at-large pool. Might have to start in Dayton, but at least you'd have a two-bid MAC, right, Greg? And I think the other part of them is, and I think I said this to you before, the way they've been playing, I was confident they're going to get to Cleveland and win the thing. But now I think we have to address the new injury to Luke. I don't want to butcher his last name, but is it Skoljak?
Close enough.
Close enough. But anyway, yeah, so now they have two major injuries. They've been playing most of the year without Evan Epsaro. He's become an assistant coach effectively. You see him all the time. It's Luke Skoljak. There's a lot of concern that he might not return, especially these next two games this week. So monitor that. Hopefully that's not something the committee would leverage against the Red Hawks if he is out for the season, because we know about all this larger, a power conference team adjustments for guys being out, like JT Toppin and Wilson for North Carolina, et cetera. So keep your eye on that. The other thing I'm worried about with the injury as well is they clearly took a step backwards without him against Western Michigan. Western Michigan's not a good team. They trailed at halftime. They trailed late into the game. They really had to rally to win it by 2 points. And that's concerning because Western Michigan hasn't really shown much at all this year. They're 4-12 in the conference. If that's a sign of things to come, I'm going to be a little bit pins and needles this week, Greg.
Yep, I think that is something very much to be taking a look at, because that Epsaro injury, I mean, that's what's made Miami of Ohio's run even more incredible. He was a top 3 scorer for them in non-conference play. They seemingly got better without him, with him becoming, like you said, the effective assistant coach. But now that you've got multiple injuries, it should be interesting to see. And what is essentially being played out there in Cleveland, Ohio, the MAC tournament, a home court advantage for Akron as well. So very important to be noting that, as well as we do have Rocco Miller, does such great work over at bracketeer.org, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, and we're going to dive into those mid-major conferences in a second. But you did bring up something interesting about taking a look at injuries, and is it fair to say that perhaps Texas Tech had the best week of anyone last week? Because there were many people that had the demise of Texas Tech written out there. I was bearish on them, but I wasn't going to rule them out because I love Grant McCasland as a coach. You and I have both talked about Luke Bumboy, the gentleman down low for Texas Tech that was out for towards the beginning part of the season. I thought he would step up, and boy, he's done even more than I was expecting. And how do you take a look at this Texas Tech team now? Because I don't know if I could quite put them back in the Final Four national title conversation, but I think that news of the demise of Texas Tech was very, very much prematurely put out there.
They're making a little bit of a mockery early on of the whole selection committee think tank, right? Which is, if you're missing a star player, you're suddenly worse. Now, I understand in general, you figure to be worse, a lot of teams would struggle without their best player, especially a big man of JT Toppin's talent level. But we're now in an NIL era where you have a lot of depth on some of these big-time teams, and Texas Tech's in that boat. Texas Tech's a team that built their roster this year for a Final Four appearance. Last year they were just a couple minutes away from being in the Final Four, and they went all in on this roster. So there are reinforcements, if you will. And Bamboye, he's been a guy that's been in and out of the lineup throughout the year. He's a big guy. The only thing that concerns me there, if he were to go down, I think there would be some drop-off just because Mariel Akuntuk, I always mess up his name. He's barely seen any action this year. He's now the backup, and he would be pressed into action as a young 6'11", 240-pound, raw, freshman, young. Just big learning curve for a guy like that. And really, after this next week of the regular season finishing, Texas Tech's only going to be playing in big games. It's either going to be Big 12 tournament games or NCAA tournament games. And so that's my only concern with Texas Tech going forward. I love the 7-man rotation they used at Iowa State. You obviously build the middle around Bamboye, but Lawan Watts is so good this year. Jalen Petty's been phenomenal as a freshman from my hometown in Seattle. Christian Anderson, is a superstar. And Donovan Atwell has been a huge pickup. He hit 6 threes against Iowa State. The team goes 14 for 29 from deep. Bamboya goes 6 for 7 in the paint. I mean, it was a dream scenario where the Cyclones couldn't figure out which thing to live with, inside or outside, because they couldn't solve either problem. And on the other end of the court, Iowa State struggled. They only made 8 threes themselves. They shot under 43% from 2, and they also turned the ball over. I mean, they only turned the ball over 7 times, but again, it was a game where they got in a deep hole early, and it was just too much to overcome. And Texas Tech, with this core of 7 guys, they're in great shape to continue succeeding. But again, they need certain things to break their way, and they don't have quite the depth they had before. So it is a game-to-game experience there. However, they're still capable of achieving all their goals if they can keep these 7 healthy.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I love what I've seen out of Texas Tech thus far. I think that both you and I are giving Grant McCasland the respect that he deserves. I don't know if he quite gets that nationally, and what Texas Tech has done here recently has been tremendous. We'll see if they can keep it going, but so far so good. And what else is good is starting on Monday, we get our first conference tournament game, albeit maybe not the most rambunctious one, between IU Indy and Cleveland State, but man, I am jazzed up for these, and we get a lot of the smaller tournaments this week. And who are a few teams that you've got your eye on? Because obviously everyone's talking about Miami of Ohio and what they're going to be able to do in the MAC tournament next week, but there is a lot of teams like UNC Wilmington, McNeese, Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin. There's a lot of 24-plus win teams that it's going to be do or die for them, unfortunately, and it's going to be a lot of great, shall we say, high-pressure action for many of these mid-major teams, where if the top team gets in, I think that there could be a little bit of chaos in the first round of the NCAA tournament.
Well, yeah, we could start right there in the Horizon League. I think Robert Morris has really been the story of February. They go undefeated in the month, and they beat Wright State down the stretch. And if you're looking at a 1-2 type of punch, and I think Robert Morris did end up wrapping up the 2 seed on Saturday. They are playing very, very well. Over that period of time in the month of February, they're a top 70 defense. They've done a lot of different elements of the game well in terms of getting to the foul line and in terms of not fouling opponents. They're certainly playing at a highly focused level. And when you look at the rest of the Horizon, it's pretty up for grabs. I mean, Detroit Mercy is the most inspiring story. The fact that they went 12-8 and they're the number 3 seed with a home game is unbelievable. And so that's going to be fun to see them play. Is it Fort Wayne? No, I'm not remembering right now.
Detroit's got Milwaukee.
Yeah. So I like that matchup for Detroit, Greg. And so that will be a fun story to follow. A lot of fun stories across the Horizon. I think as you asked the question, you asked like a broad spectrum of mid-major. It would be hard to argue anybody's playing better than Navy. And Navy gets the entire Patriot League tournament on their home court in that environment. That's going to be special, I think. And I fully expect Navy to run that tournament at home on their floor. But will be a really cool experience. It's been a long time since they broke through to the NCAA tournament, and that will be awesome for guys like Austin Bonini, who has been an all-conference player, I think, for 3 straight years now. Aiden Kehoe is just an unstoppable force in that league at 6'11", 250. Love the way Navy's played. Over at the Summit League shall be fascinating because North Dakota State played well for a lot of the year. They end up taking 2 losses total. They got blown out at St. Thomas in the final week. That was a game I almost went up to. I didn't make it because it didn't have high stakes for the 1 seed by the time we got to the last week. But St. Thomas, the way they pounded them, that might send a message for if we get that championship game. And don't forget, St. Thomas, Greg, this is their first chance to be eligible for the NCAAs. They will be playing inspired basketball. They play one of the most fun systems in the country over the last month of the season. They're number 1 in the nation in effective field goal percentage, number 1 in 2-point percentage. And they've also gotten kind of that shot quality type luck with the second best 3-point percentage defense. If you're a Tommy's fan, you better hope that carries over to Sioux Falls because they'll need that for 3 straight wins when they get there. That's a fascinating tournament to me. I think Arch Madness takes the cake every year. This year is no different. As we wrapped up Sunday, we saw the seeds fall into place. Bradley locks up the 2 seed. Illinois State with a monster final week, winning at Northern Iowa and knocking off the top dogs Belmont, Greg. Now the Redbirds, although it's been for several weeks of the season a disappointment with all the talent they brought back, they suddenly ride a last-minute high here with all of those expectations and the tournament right in front of them, it's going to be a one bid league. Illinois State at the 3 seed level has all the advantages as the 2 seed or the 1 seed from a bracket standpoint. And so we'll see how that shakes out. Now with Illinois State, they're going to play the winner of Northern Iowa, Evansville. You kind of have to assume that's Northern Iowa. And Northern Iowa just dominated Drake. They swept Drake for the first time in 6 years today, as we record this on Sunday night. Northern Iowa, Illinois State on Friday. Circle your calendars because the winner of that is going to have a lot of confidence heading into Saturday. Now, again, you and I have watched Arch Madness probably every year since we can remember. If that game ends up being a grinder and a double overtime thriller, it could go the opposite way to where the winner is not full strength, not 100% the next day, and runs out of gas. So you have to pay attention to how these games flow once we get into tournament mode to have a good understanding of how the following day is going to play out. But man, these matchups in Arch Madness on paper look amazing. 4 versus 5 gives us Murray State against UIC. That's also a Friday game, and game 2 should be tremendous. And Valparaiso's been one of my favorite stories. They lose on a buzzer beater to Evansville on Saturday to fall into the 7 seed. So now they got to get by Indiana State on Thursday. But should they do that, they'll play a Bradley team who they just beat 2 weeks ago in the 7-2 game. So a really good opportunity there for Valpo to shock the Braves again, but they've got to handle their Sycamore business first. So yeah, we could do a whole show on Arch Madness.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of my favorite tournaments. Always one of the best tournaments to the under as well. I don't know what it is about the Enterprise Center, but I'm sure you've watched it as well as I have. It feels like three-point shooting just goes into the total abyss in that environment every single year. Yeah, I don't know if it's a shooting backdrop. I don't know if it's a rims they use, but man, if you've been betting the under in Arch Madness over the last decade or so, you have made yourself a lot of money. So that's always one that I love to be looking at, as Rocco Miller does great work over at Bracketeer.org is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I don't think that we mentioned these few teams, but how do you take a look at a team that was able to wrap up things on Sunday? We're doing this as they have the lead, so I don't know if they got the job done or not, but we're talking about these teams that have been very good thus far. UNC Wilmington is a team that I have a big, giant star around, and if they're able to get by in the Coastal Conference, that's a team that I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on, because I feel like they, along with Stephen Austin and McNeese, have really been the 3 teams that have sort of lost a little bit of the luster that they deserve, because everyone's right now talking about Miami of Ohio.
Yeah, UNC Wilmington is the Miami, Ohio of the CAA because of the fact that UNCW last year's NCAA tournament, they did actually break through. So a little bit different than Miami, Ohio from that standpoint. But the way it's similar is, you look back at that tournament game last year against Texas Tech, they had the lead pretty late into the second half, Greg, and they were on the verge of giving us the one upset we desperately wanted to see in the tournament. We never got it really, but they were probably, them and Robert Morris were probably the closest to actually winning from a 13-plus seed position. It was a 14 versus 3 game. And of course, Texas Tech basically almost went to the Final Four, as we covered earlier. So what UNC Wilmington did this offseason is keep together guys like Nolan Hodge and Greedy Williams and Noah Ross, while also layering in one of Towson's most important players in Christian May, and going and getting Patrick Wessler, a 7-foot, 250-pound beast from Virginia Tech. They also layered in a couple of other transfers from within the league. The resources at Wilmington are clearly one of the best, if not the best, in the league between them and Charleston. It's no surprise to see them in the top 2 if you know how their NIL budget works. But at the same time, they're built on a mission with these same characters. It'll be fascinating if they can get into March Madness, because I think their confidence will be a lot different than a team that's just happy to be in. They won't just be happy to be in. They definitely want to get into a 13 versus 4 or even a 12-5 and make a statement. They can do it with their personnel. I mean, they have high major players. Obviously, Wessler's played high major. So we'll see how that shakes out. I think when it comes to winning the CAA, though, the 2 losses in the league were both to William and Mary. So will they have to play William and Mary in the tournament is a large looming question as we get to one more game to go. For William and Mary to finish on their half of the bracket, they would need to beat Hampton on Tuesday, have Drexel or Monmouth or both lose. Drexel heads to Hofstra in a really big game, and Monmouth is at Northeastern, who's at the bottom of the league. So you would expect Monmouth to get through at 11-7. Drexel in a little bit more trouble. And then you look at the tiebreakers, William and Mary and Drexel, and you see that they only played once and Drexel won. So I think William and Mary will end up the 6th seed is my best guess based on that. And that's good news for Wilmington, because they might not see them until the championship game.
Yep, I'm right there with you. That CAA conference tournament is going to be great theater. A team in Towson that ran the conference last year, they have fallen on some tough times, but I mean, we every single year see some team come out of nowhere. In the last year of their run in the Coastal Conference, Delaware was sub 500. They made it all the way to the final, so that's going to be a good one. I'm very much looking forward to what we're going to be seeing out there in the Patriot League, which you mentioned, because if Navy is able to win that conference tournament, which typically the 1 and 2 seeds do very well in the Patriot League, they're a team that I think could be able to give a higher seed a very, very big scare as well. So we've got lots of fun, Rocco. It's your time of year, and I know you're doing a great job at a variety of different outlets. So love to get people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, appreciate it, Greg. Bracketshere.org is the mothership. I'll be doing 3 bracket updates a week starting this week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That will get you through Championship Week 1. And then, of course, next week is Championship Week 2. Don't forget, we get a whole fortnight, Greg, of Championship Week starting on Monday, March 2nd, leading into Selection Sunday, March 15th. So bracketshere.org will have all your updates, even if you're on the go. Pretty easy to pull up and see where your favorite team is projected to go, and some notes each time on why the bracket is the way it is. The site is built for education. We've got people working games now in the East Coast, the Midwest, all over the country, and contributing. So it's been a lot of fun to see the growth, and we appreciate everybody's support. There's a support button there. If you feel inclined or you like the work we're doing, we appreciate all the support that's come in throughout the year and as we go forward. And then, of course, Field of 68, we're going to be doing Fielding the 68 Mondays and Fridays, 5 Eastern. Bracket updates coming on their social channels on those same days, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, for both championship weeks. I'll probably make some more after dark appearances, which is always exciting. You can catch that on satellite radio, channel 84, and of course on any of their platforms. Basket under review, weekly teams of the week. We're also going to have some special announcements for that as we go into March Madness, and especially when we get to the Final Four, we're going to have some meetups. So please, if you're going to be in Indianapolis, come say hello and reach out before we get to April. And last but not least, the mock selection committee, Greg. We met for one day going into the bracket preview show in February. We will do the entire exercise this next weekend, beginning Thursday into Friday, Saturday, and with a final committee bracket on Sunday. It's a week early, but it's a great opportunity for you to learn about the process. I don't recommend sitting there and watching us for 10 to 20 hours. It's probably a better use of your time. But if you want to come on YouTube and skip around or hang out with us for a while and ask questions, it's a perfect time to do it. We'll get all the YouTube information out later this week. But again, that's going to start Thursday night.
We need like a narrator for that. And as you see, Rocco Miller taking a nice big giant swig of water as he's trying to evaluate Stone Cold Steve Austin and whether or not he should be on the 13 seed line or the 14 seed line. That would be absolutely theater. I'd be there for all of the hours of it because Rocco, he is such a wealth of knowledge, doing such great work, looking at the sport that we all know and love of college basketball, and every single time he joins me, learns such great insight. So big thanks to Rocco for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some big shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. It is always a pleasure to be joined by Rocco Miller, who does such great work over at Bracketeer.org. Such a wealth of knowledge every single time he joins me, lends such great insights, and he did so once again today. So big thanks to Rocco for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GUNet_81, and we are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the bigger conference games first, and then any conference tournament games are always going to be listed at the bottom. So note that for the next 2 weeks because IU Indy Cleveland State, that is our first conference tournament game. That is going to be at the bottom of the normal board. And then these are the conferences that will be featured in the extra games. The MEAC and the Southland, I believe that those are the lone 2 conferences that we've got for the extra games board. So how about if we get things started? 861, 862, it's Duke on the road against NC State. NC State opened up as about an 8.5 point underdog. This has now gone to 9.5 total on this game. between 148 to a 148.5, and I made my number 8.5. So 9 to 9.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with NC State and recognize that it's an NC State defense that has not been savory to say the least. And Duke, they are currently numero uno in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they have allowed 64 points or fewer in 9 out of the last 10 games. NC State, meanwhile, they're 139th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I will throw in there this, though. They are allowing NC State as 18.2 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home. If you look at home games and home games only, they do check in the top 50 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and I do think that that's going to help you to the under. Have a Duke team that's really not pushing a aggressive tempo. 260th in terms of total possessions frame. NC State is more around 104th, and I think NC State is going to be hard pressed to be able to find good 3-point looks against a Duke team that's in the top 35 in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. Goes into the top 20 with regards to 2-point shooting percentage. You've got Cameron Boozer as best player out there on the floor, 22.5 points, 10 boards, 4 assists, shoots 41% from 3. Duke's starting to pick it up a little bit with that 3-point shooting. Still leaves something to be desired. Isaiah Evans will look good over the weekend against Virginia, 14.5 points. Throws in there nearly a steal and a block per contest, and Patrick Ngangba has been tremendous, being able to give you about 6 rebounds per game, but NC State does have a guy with versatility in Darian Williams that I like. He's been really the leader with about 14 points, 5 boards, 3 assists. He shoots 40% from 3. Kadir Copeland, 7 assists, 3.5 boards, has size as a point forward. He's done a good job leading the way. Van Allen Lubin has been able to give you 7 rebounds per game. That is ultimately where I think NC State is going to have the toughest time. They are a team that has not been grabbing a lot of second and third chances well outside the top 200 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. It's a Duke team that has been 18th with grabbing 35.3% of their misses as an offensive rebound. That said, for this NC State team, they've been pretty solid in terms of generating turnovers. Really, both of these teams have been top 70 teams in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Do think that things get a little bit sloppier. NC State all season long has been a top 25 team in terms of ball security. I think that is going to be just enough for them to remain lively here and a little bit more of a defense-oriented game. Somehow line at 8.5, so we'll take 9+ here with NC State, and I do like that under as well. Made my total 145.5, 863, 864. Montana State is on the road. They're facing off against Northern Arizona. The Lumberjacks are home underdog here at 5.5 points. 141.5 to 142.5 is the total. I like the over. I set my total 145.5. Northern Arizona is really not playing a lot of defense right now. They're actually playing at a very slow tempo. If you look in terms of total possessions per game, Northern Arizona well outside the top 300 right now, but boy. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in their home games, 359th. They are allowing teams at home to shoot over 38% from 3-point range, so that's not great. And Montana State, they've been shooting right around about 35.7% from the outside. That's rock solid. You've got a Northern Arizona team that they are 52nd in the country. They shoot 36.3% from 3, so I do think that you're going to get some made threes in this game. I just think that Montana State's going to do a better job. Now, Montana State doesn't give themselves second and third chances. They're well outside the top 280 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, but I have a Northern Arizona team that last year was actually one of the best defensive rebound percentage teams in all of college basketball. They lose Carson Towne and things have went straight down the toilet bowl from there. Northern Arizona 311th in terms of percentage of opponents' missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Meanwhile, Montana State, they've been a top 135 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, despite the fact that you've only got one guy that gives you 5+ boards. Jed Miller, that's your top scorer, 15 points, 5.5 boards, 3 assists, shoots 40% from 3. Davion Brown then throws in their 3.5 boards. He shoots 43% from 3. Jeremiah Davis has stepped up as an ancillary 39% 3-point shooter, 8.5 points. And it is a Montana State team that has been solid in terms of live ball turnovers. They're a top 200 team in terms of steals on a per possession basis. For Northern Arizona, they had Zach Davidson, their top scorer, go down midseason. So they've been very much relying upon Ryan Abelman, and he's been able, man, to be able to give you 11 points, 5 boards, and shoots 37% from 3. Isaiah Shaw, 44% 3-point shooter, 8 points per contest. Carl Marcus Pohm has been able to step up, give you about 9.5 points per game. Not necessarily too much of a 3-point shooter, but for this Northern Arizona team, they're going to get absolutely waxed down low. They're also outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Bottom 15 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. You put them at the free throw line, they shoot 68.5% of the free throw line. I do think that Montana State is going to be able to get the job done and be able to find many open looks against this Northern Arizona defense. I like the over, so my total 145.5, and willing to lay up to 7 with Montana State made them the 7.5 point favorite. 865, 166. It's Montana going on the road against Northern Colorado. Northern Colorado is a 6.5 point favorite total on this game, 153.5 to 154.5, and I like the over. I did set my total at a 155. You have a Montana team that's looking to play at a brisk tempo, 102nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Northern Colorado, always a pretty up-tempo team, 80th in terms of total possessions per game. I am willing to lay it here with Northern Colorado because they're not going to give us second chances. They are 8th in the country with opponents grabbing just 22.7% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That goes to 19% at home. That is the second best defensive rebound percentage at home in all of college basketball. Now, they don't put you under duress. They're well outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis on defense. On offense, top 140 team in terms of taking care of the ball. Montana is the opposite. 341st in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. I think that's between A and B. They'll probably still have some turnovers, not as many as they typically have, and they do have money on their side. For Montana, you've got Money Williams giving 19 points, 4 boards, 5 assists, and 4 turnovers per game while shooting 37% from 3. It's a Montana team that's really been cooking from 3-point range. Overall for the season, they shoot a little bit over 36% from 3-point range, but if you look at what they've been able to do in a roadside shoot-to-court environment, this goes into the top 25. They shoot 38.2% from the outside, but Tajon Sawyer is a lone guy in the roster that gives you over 4.1 rebounds per game, 12 points, 5.4 boards for Montana. They're a bottom 10 team in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Haven't been bad with regards to their opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentages. They're in the top 175 in both categories, but it's a Northern Colorado team that is very efficient on offense. They're a top 30 team with their 2-point shooting percentage. Quinn Denker, 18.5 points, 7.5 assists, only shoots about 33% per 3, but Zach Block, 43% 3-point shooter, 12 points per contest. Brock Wisney, 6.5 boards, throws in their 17 points per game. The ancillary guys like Ring Nari has been able to give you 8.5 points, 6.5 boards, a block per contest. So I like what they bring to the table in a pressure spot. This team does shoot 75.5% at the free throw line, and Montana very good at the free throw line as well, 77.5% at the free throw line. So if this game is tight, both of these teams hit their free throws. So I do like the over here, but with this bunch in Northern Colorado, they also have a lot of teams that shoot less than 31.5% from 3, top 50 mark in the country. I think that wins the day. Willing to lay up to 6.5 with Northern Colorado, and I like the over. Semi total 155.5. 867, 868. Iowa State is on the road against Arizona. Arizona, 7.5 point favorite. Total on this game, 147.5. And with Iowa State, I did make them a 5-point dog. I'm going to be willing to take the points, recognize that it was less than savory what we saw over the weekend against Texas Tech, and I do think that people buried Texas Tech a little bit too early, and Iowa State, still a rock-solid defense. They're 8th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, 7th in terms of turnovers generated on a per-possession basis, and that 3-point shooting has been able to travel. It's overall 39% from the outside, still about 37.5% from 3-point range in a roadside shoot-to-court venue, and they do have the leg up on Arizona on that. Arizona's not a team that's looking to go bombs away from 3. They shoot 35.3% overall, 36.3% in their home games, and I do like what Jaden Bradley has been able to bring to the table. He's been a 40+% 3-point shooter. Has really been the quarterback of the offense. 4.5 assists, 14 points per game. You get back Koa Pete, that's big. 14 points, 5.5 boards. Not really a threat to be able to pop it from 3, but good versatility with to give you about 2.5 assists per game. Now, where Arizona's going to have the edge is going to be on the glass. Top 10 team in terms of rebound percentage. Iowa State, they track in well outside the top 30 with that regard. Toby Awaka, Monteuvas, Krivas. These two guys combined for about 18 rebounds and 19.5 to 20 points per game. Braden Burries has actually been your top scorer with 15.5 points per game, but for Iowa State, you have to love what you've been able to get out of Tamon Lipsby. Not a guy that's going to go into inferno mode from 3-point range or anything like that, but he just helps this offense run very, very smoothly. 13 points, 4.5 boards, 5 assists, multiple steals per contest. Milan Mimosevic has been continuing to shoot 50+% from 3, 17.5 points per game. And then Joshua Jefferson, his versatility is able to match all of that of Arizona. 16.5 points, 7.5 boards, 5 assists, steal and a half per contest. And with Blake Buchanan being able to come on strong, give this team 5.5 boards down low. I do think that this Iowa State team has enough to hold up down low. Now, the concern I do have with Iowa State is their 67% free throw shooting. That is in the bottom 30 in all of college basketball, but they're actually the better 2-point shooting percentage team than this Arizona team as well. They are just outside the top 85 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but with them being able to generate turnovers the way that they do, I think that that's going to allow them to remain lively. I do think that this is going to come down to late game fouls, and I do think that you get enough possessions for the over as Arizona right now in terms of total possessions per game. They do check in 41st in the country. I would say much more of a mid-tempo team. They're hovering right around about 221st, but made a total of 149. I like the over, and I'm going to take the points with Iowa State. I did set them them as a 5-point dog. 869, 870 on the card. Idaho's going to be on the road against Eastern Washington, and Eastern Washington is a 3 to a 3.5 point favorite. Tallest game is 152.5, and with Eastern Washington could only make them a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Idaho. Idaho just does not allow you to be able to get second and third chances. It's a defense that overall, it's not amazing, but still 173rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That does climb into the top 140 when they're in a road/neutral venue, and for Idaho, they're allowing teams to grab only about 22.7% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is 7th in the country in games played away from home. That goes to Mambo number 5, and for Idaho, you just have really good balance with this team. Someone like a Jackson Rasmussen has been able to give you 13 points per game. Colton Griffin throws in there 13 points per contest. It's a good three-point shooting team. I'm not necessarily going to call it an amazing three-point shooting team. And then for Eastern Washington, you've been able to have Isaiah Moses give you 17 plus points per game. He's shooting 40+% from three-point range, and you've been able to have someone in Kyrie Huey along with Elton Hamilton combined for about 11 rebounds per game for an Eastern Washington team. That is much better at home rather than away from home. They're 43rd overall, shooting 36.5% from three-point range. Idaho, meanwhile, they do shoot about 35.1% from three. That's just inside the top 120, and it is an Eastern Washington team that you take a look at their defensive splits, and they are very, very drastic, as this team overall for the season has been outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. As a matter of fact, they're in 5th, but they are giving up about 15.9 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home. At Idaho, they are overall 308th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. That's 37.5% at home compared to 35.4% away from home. And I'm not saying that 35.4% away from home is magnificent, but it is a little bit better, and this has been an Eastern Washington team that has been a little bit more loose with the ball. You've got a Idaho team that commits fewer than 11 turnovers per game, with Eastern Washington more like 12.5 turnovers per game. They're outside the top 235 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. With Eastern Washington, you have had JoJo Anderson be able to play about 7 points per game, and in a pressure spot, this team shoots 75.5% at the free throw line. That's the top 85 mark in the country. Meanwhile, for Idaho, they're knocking down about 74.5% of their free throws, and they have been a top 100 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, with Brody Woodbury helping out down low, 8 points per contest, and then you have the 46% 3-point shooter in Isaiah Brickner that I think is going to be able to keep them lively. Pair of teams that are looking to play fast, but not necessarily warp speed fast. Idaho, a very mid-tempo team, 145th in terms of total possessions per game. Eastern Washington, 153rd. So made a line of 1.5. I'm going to take 2+ here with Idaho, and I did set my total at a 153.5. Here at the 152.5, in on the over to go along with the points with the Vandals. 871, 872. Weber State is going to be on the road against Portland State. Portland State, 4.5 point favorites. 144.5 to 145.5 is the total. I'm in on the under. I did set my total at a 143. You do have a Weber State team that's looking to bump it up a little bit with regards to tempo. 88th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and for Portland State overall for the season, they're right around about 157th in terms of total possessions per game. They've slowed down a little bit here in conference play, and it is a Portland State team that they get a little bit careless with the ball. 260th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Weber State is 111th, but this is a Portland State team that just absolutely bears down on defense. And Weber State, they're right now in that neighborhood about 261st in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. With this Portland State team, they are 53rd, and that goes into the top 45 at home. I think that that's going to be able to carry the day along with Scary Terry Miller. Scary Terry Miller has been absolutely tremendous for Portland State. 19.5 points, 5.5 boards, 3.5 assists, shoots 42% from three. He's the best player in this game. Jalen Anderson is an outstanding number 2 scorer. Throws in there 6 assists. Now, he doesn't shoot it well from 3, but is able to give you about 18 points per game. Weber State is a group that has been a top 110 team with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. At home, Portland State allows teams to shoot just 30.5% from 3-point shots, a top 70 mark in the country. For Weber State, you've been able to get a lot out of Vajami Vartanen, who's been able to give you about 13 points, and from 3-point range, he shoots about 43.5% from the outside. And then you do have some good rebounding by committee for this team. Malik Oma, 7 boards, 8.5 points per game. Edwin Suarez, 6 boards, right around about 9.5 points per game. And those two guys combined for about 2 steals per game. Nigel Burris, he's got versatility, shoots about 35% from 3, 10 points, 5 rebounds per game. But with Weber State being a bunch that they do give it up big time on the inside, they are outside the top 320 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. And this is a Portland State team that is pretty content to pile drive the ball inside. For Portland State, in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage, they're overall outside the top 200, but it gets much better at home. In their home games specifically, this is a team that's in the top 150 with this regard, with the way that they're a top 30 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage as well. I do think that this is going to be a game where the Portland State defense wins out. I do think that they win from within. I said Portland State is a 7-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and I'm in on the under semi-total 143, 873, 874. Idaho State is on the road against Sacramento State. Sacramento State, 1.5-point favorite. So on this game between 160.5 to 161.5, and I like Idaho State here on the money line. I set them as a 1.5-point favorite. Now, Idaho State has been pretty ghastly on defense. They're 25th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they actually give up 3.6 points fewer per 100 possessions away from them rather than at home. And Sacramento State has one of the most wackadoo 3-point shooting splits I've ever seen in my life. This is a Sacramento State team that overall shoots 32.1% from three, 8th in the country at home at 41.3%, 359th away from home at 26.8%. Now, I think that 41 plus percent is going to be ironing out a little bit, and they're still dealing with the injury to the point guard and Mikey Williams as well, a guy that was giving you right around about 5 assists per game, wasn't necessarily lighting it up from three, but put in there 17 points per game. And then Prophet Johnson, he is very profitable for teams because he does a little bit of everything. He's right now supplying 18.5 points, 7.5 boards, 4 assists, 2.7 steals, shoots 40% from three. Johnny Summers, he's been able to shoot 42% from the outside, but outside those two guys, you really don't have anyone else other than Mark Levernoff, who's been able to give you over 6.5 points per game for a team that is in the top 35 in terms of total possessions per game. Idaho State looking to slow things down. They're outside the top 3 in terms of total possessions per game. Now you've got Shaquille O'Neal, that's actually the son of Shaquille O'Neal, 5.5 points, 3 boards. You just need a little bit more there. And then for this Idaho State team, you've been able to have Caleb Vandergreen be able to do a really nice job along with Connor Hollenbeck in terms of combining for about 25 points per game between the two of them. You get nearly 11 boards per contest, with Hollenbeck shoots 35.5% from three. It's an Idaho State team that has been a top 150 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. In a pressure spot, they do shoot 75% at the free throw line. And for Sacramento State, a lot of their offense is built around free throw shooting. They're a top 30 team in terms of free throw attempts per game. They shoot 78% at the charity stripe. That is a top 20 mark in the country, but for Sacramento State, they're also well outside the top 3 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and they're outside the top 310 in their own 2-point shooting percentage as well. It is an Idaho State team that's getting blasted from the outside. They're allowing teams to shoot 35.6% from three. That's outside the top 290 in all of college basketball, but still, again, I do think that Sacramento State sees a little bit of a downfall with that 3-point shooting, with Evan on down low, giving you multiple blocks per contest. I think that Idaho State in this game finds a way to be able to get the job done and slow it down a little bit. So I told 157.5. I like the under and Idaho State on the money line, and this will be the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games. This is 875, 876. You've got Cleveland St, and they're going to be playing with IU Indy. IU Indy is a underdog here of 1.5 points. 171.5 to 172.5 is the total, and I made my line 3.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Cleveland State. Now, it's a Cleveland State team that is not good down low. They're outside the top 300 with regards to their overall rebound percentage. IU Indy is a bottom 15 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage, and it's a Cleveland State team that has been able to do a relatively okay job in terms of executing on the inside in their home games. They're a top 150 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, and I will say for IU Indy, they have been able to do a nice job on the inside in games played away from home. They're actually a top 45 team in their 2-point shooting percentage away from home, and then you've got a Cleveland State team that has been one of the best 3-point shooting teams in all of college basketball. 26th in the country. They shoot 37.5% from three, but I do think that with the season on the line, two teams that play incredibly up-tempo. IU Indy, they're currently 9th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Cleveland State, they're hovering more around about the neighborhood of about 67th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. I do think that this game is going to be slowing down just a hair bit, and I do think that with Cleveland State, they are going to be able to find a way to get the job done with Trey Beard being able to give you 13 plus points per contest, shoots over 40% from three against an IU Indy team that they're allowing teams to shoot over 37% from 3-point. That's a bottom 15 mark in the country. IU Indy still good at generating turnovers, 45th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and it is a Cleveland State team that has been turning the ball over quite a bit, outside the top 285 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but Dion Desai throws in there 15 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. Josiah Harris has been able to give you about 6 boards, 9.5 points per game, and if it comes down to free throws, Cleveland State, they shoot 75.5% at the free throw line. That is the top 75 mark in the country, and Cleveland State is getting both torch down low. They're outside the top 350 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, you've got an IU Indy team that they've been turning the ball over themselves right around about 12 times per game, so they get a little bit sloppy there. They only shoot about 32.5% from three-point range, and you've got Kyler D'Agostino supplying about 18.5 points per game. He's been able to shoot about 39% from three-point range as the main headline scorer for the team, but you only have two guys on the roster that give you over 4 rebounds per game. Jackson Edwards, Finley Woodyard, they combine for 10.8 rebounds per game, and Woodyard 6 assists, 9 points per game, so good versatility there, but it's an IU Indy team that still has been outside the top 190 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're a bottom 5 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis, a top 5 team in terms of free throw attempts allowed to their opponents on a per game basis. I think that the free throw shooting disparity allows Cleveland State on their own floor to get the job done, and I do think that the dead possessions do help you out to the under. So semi total 169.5. I like the under, and with Cleveland State, willing to lay up to 3 with them, and now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-501, 306-502. Norfolk State is going to be on the road against Morgan State. Morgan State, a home underdog of 2.5 points, 154.5 to 155.5 is the total line. I like Morgan State on the money line. I did set them as a 2-point favorite. You do have a Norfolk State team that is going to have perhaps the top 2 scorers in this game, though Alfred Worrell is going to have something to say for Morgan State. He's been supplying 18 points from three-point range, shoots about 37.5% from 3, 88% of the free throw line, and that I think is a big kicker in this game. Right now for Morgan State, they shoot 73.9% at the free throw line. They're a top 50 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. You got a Norfolk State team that they're not looking to play super duper slow. They're not looking to play super duper fast either. In terms of total possessions per game with Norfolk State, they are about 193rd in the country. Meanwhile, Morgan State, they started out the year relatively slowly, and they've really cranked it up. They're up to about 58th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. But for Norfolk State, you just have to be very concerned about the overall sloppiness of this team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. For Norfolk State, they are currently checking in outside the top 300 in all of college basketball. Now, you've got the two main headline guys. You've had 16.5 points, 4.5 boards per contest out of Anthony McComb, who shoots 39% from 3, and then Elijah Jamison, 14.5 points, 3 assists. Now he only shoots about 32% from 3, but Devin Ellis, 43% three-point shooter, 10.5 points per game, but you don't have a single guy on this roster that gives you over 4.4 rebounds per game. This bunch of Norfolk State is well outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. They do a good job in terms of guarding the three-point line, but it's a Morgan State team that is very much looking to pound the ball inside a little bit more. Now, to the credit of Norfolk State, they've been a top 60 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per-possession basis, but Morgan State is a team that does rank in the top 100 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage as well, so they do a rock-solid job there with this Norfolk State team, fouling as much as they do. If you look at them in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis, they are a bottom 30 team in all of college basketball. I think that allows Morgan State to get the job done, and I do think that the turnovers in this game with Norfolk State generating a ton on defense and having ball issues on offense outside the top 270 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, that helps you to the under. So I told 152. I like the under and Morgan State on the money line. 306-503, 306-504. Delaware State is going to be playing us to South Carolina State. South Carolina State, an underdog of 1.5 to 2.5 points, 137.5 to 138.5 is the total. I set my total at a 134. I'm going to be in on the under mainly because these two offenses have been absolutely terrible this year. Out of 365 Division I teams, Delaware State is dead stinking last in terms of points per possession, and South Carolina State is 355th. Now, it's not to say that these defenses have been magical. South Carolina State is well outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Delaware State is more of a country average team, though. They're 23rd in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. South Carolina State actually generates a few turnovers themselves. They're 79th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and oh, you guessed it, neither of these teams taking care of the ball. South Carolina State 355th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, and Delaware State 346. So both of these teams I think are going to be very, very sloppy with it. Delaware State is playing at a slow tempo, 288th in terms of total possessions per game. South Carolina State is a little bit more of an up-tempo team, but again, what are they going to be able to do with all these possessions? And I did set Delaware State as a 2-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on them mainly because I do think that home court advantage is really going to be the key, and Delaware State is a bit better on defense, and you've got the Ponce James, who's been able to give you 14 points, does shoot 85% the free throw line and 40% from 3-point range. Dealt with some ailments, did return in the team's last game against NC Central, so that's a good sign. Miles Webb has been able to supply you with about 6 rebounds per game. He's been dealing with a little bit of ailment, but he should be good to go here as well. And then Corey Perkins, he gives you about 3 assists, C1.5 per contest as sort of the quarterback of the offense. And then for South Carolina State, you've been able to have a pair of guys give you double figures, and Jane Johnson along with Owen Bronson, they combine for about 24 points. Between the two of them, shoot 35.5% from 3. Here's also why I can't back South Carolina State in this game. Out of 365 Division I teams, if you include non-D1 numbers, because free throw shooting, I mean, it just is what it is, 356. They shoot 65.2% of the free throw line. Not to say Delaware State is magical. They shoot 68.5% at the free throw line, but man, man, that is rough to say the least. And then you've had Noah Treadwell be able to supply about 8.5 points per game. You do have a pair of guys in Christopher Parker along Cameron Clark, who both missed 7 games earlier in the season. They're your top rebounders with about 5.3 to 5.4 rebounds per game. But I think that the overall sloppiness of this team is really going to be costly. And they're also a bottom 10 team with their 2-point shooting percentage. So with Delaware State, I'm willing to lay the 1.5, made them 2-point favorite. And I like the under. Sub by total 134, 306.505, 306.506. NC Central is going to be on the road against Maryland Eastern Shore. And the Shore does find themselves as a favorite here of 1.5 points. Tonight's game 133.5, and I like the under. I set my total at a 129.5. First time these two teams played, neither team got past 30 points in the first half. Had a little bit of a, shall we say, faster second half, but that was still an underwhelming game, and I think that you're getting the exact same here with a pair of teams that they aren't taking great care of the ball. Neither of these teams are very good on offense. In the case of NC Central, 324th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Maryland Eastern Shore even more deplorable, as right now they are outside the top 350 as they're 360th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now, I did set Maryland Eastern Shore as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it, even though I think that this game is going to be involving a bunch of turnovers, and NC Central is a better team in terms of generating turnovers. Maryland Eastern Shore, they're about 115th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and it's an NC Central team that does check in the top 50 with this regard. But if you look at home games specifically, Maryland Eastern Shore is 5th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. That, I think, is going to be a massive X factor for NC Central. You just don't have a lot of scoring options on this team either. You got the best scorer in the game, Gage Lattimore, 17.5 points, 4 boards, shoots 38.5% from 3, and then Corey Carvey, when he's been out there, has been able to give you about 13.5 points per game, has been dealing with quite a bit of ailment. We have not seen him since February 9th. If he plays in this game, probably not going to be anywhere near 100%, and those are your lone two scorers that give you 9+ points per game. Now, you do have Dante Johnson, who gives you 7.5 points, 5.5 boards, 2.3 steals per contest, and then you've got Kalichi Okagaro, who's been able to give you a little bit over a block per contest as well. But for Maryland Eastern Shore, it's very much a whole greater than the sum of its parts sort of approach with Zion Oblana, along Joseph Lusardo, your top two scorers combining for about 19.5 points per game. With Lusardo, shoots 39% from 3. Dorian Staples has been a 36% 3-point shooter. It's a Maryland Eastern Shore team that as well, they do average about 15 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home. Incredibly sloppy with the ball. Maryland Eastern Shore, bottom 5 team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. If they need to sink free throws to be able to cover a game, they shoot about 71% at the free throw line. So neither here nor there with that regard, but with them being a top 175 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and this being an NC Central team that's just very bad down low. They're outside the top 285 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, and opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. With NC Central, they only shoot about 71% at the free throw line. I do think that Maryland Eastern Shore is able to get the job done, especially with NC Central also being a bottom 30 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. So I set my total here at a 129.5. Neither of these teams are pushing tempo whatsoever, especially Maryland Eastern Shore, 328th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. NC Central, 270th. So like the under, and I'm willing to lay up to a deuce here with Maryland Eastern Shore, 306.507, 306.508. Howard plays host to Coppin St. Coppin St, underdogs here of 18.5 to 19.5 points, 136.5 to 138 is the total, and I like the over. I set my total 143.5. Coppin State is 363rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're also 341st in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And this Howard team is a top 40 team with 3-point shooting percentage at home. Right now, they're shooting in their home games about 39.3% from the outside. It's a Howard team that isn't quite as fast as they've been in the past, but they are pushing tempo, 115th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Coppin State, mid-tempo team. They're about 175th in terms of total possessions per game. And Howard, I think, goes out there and just stomps the yard in this game. You've got Cedric Taylor and Bryce Harris, by far your top two scorers in this game. Both give you 17.3 to 17.4 points per game, 6.6 rebounds a piece. You get between these two guys 3 steals per game, 2.5 blocks between the two of them. Harris shoots 36% from 3. Osei Okoje has been able to shoot about 46% from 3. He's coming on strong, give you about 9.5 points per contest. It's our team that is going to be looking to pile drive the ball down low a little bit more. They are just outside the top 10 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, but you've got a Coppin State team has all sorts of terrible down low. They are outside the top 300 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Bottom 10 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage. Not a single double-figure scorer on the roster. DeMonterry Hall has been able to give you about 9.5 points. He has made as many 3-pointers as Greg Peterson this year, and he's a lone guy that gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game with 5.2 boards per contest. Khalil Horton, well, he is a hoop from 3. He shoots 38.5% for 3, 7.5 points per contest. He gives you a little bit of something, but you've got a Howard team that's currently 13th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Coppin State, 363rd in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. That is going to lead to a lot of fast break buckets for Howard, and allow them to really dominate this game. I set my line at 23.5. I'm willing to lay with Howard, and I'm in on the over. I did set my total at a 143.5. 306.509, 306.510. Incarnate Word is going to be playing us to Stephen F. Austin. Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin, 7.5 to 8.5 point favorites. So on this game, this is between a 145 to a 145.5. I do like the under. I set my total at a 143.5. This Stephen F. Austin team is really not pushing a lot of tempo in terms of total possessions per game. They are just outside the top 275 in the country, hovering more in that neighborhood, about 285th. Meanwhile, you've got an Incarnate Word team that's very slow. They're 323rd in terms of total possessions per game. Did set my line at 7.5. I'm willing to take A+ with Incarnate Word because I do get concerned if you have some late game fouls that Stephen F. Austin does not cover at the free throw line because they are 308th in the country with regards to their free throw shooting percentage. It's an Incarnate Word team that they shoot about 76% at the free throw line at home, and Incarnate Word has two really good scorers on their team that they are able to really, in my opinion, keep them lively. You've got Davion Bailey and Taj Zabetsky, who combine for 35.5 points per game between the two of them. They're shooting 37% from three, both shoot 78.3% at the free throw line between the two of them, 2 steals and about 6 assists per contest. And then you've got Harold Woods, who comes over from Northeastern, 9 points, 7 boards, a steal per contest, gives you good versatility. Jordan Pike at 6'6" is a 40% three-point shooter for an Incarnate Word team that's right now shooting 37.9% from three-point range. That is a top 35 mark in the country, and for Stephen F. Austin, the defense has been dominant all season long. They're a top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're a top 50 team with regards to overall rebound percentage, and Incarnate Word has been a top 100 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound to make up for the fact that they're outside the top 275 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage and outside the top 3 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. So that's been a little bit of an issue, but I do think that they're going to be able to find a few open looks from 3, even though Stephen F. Austin, they're about 29.5% with regards to their opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. That is a top 10 mark in the country. Goes outside the top 10 away from home, and Incarnate Word, they are allowing teams at home to shoot 35% from 3 compared to 33% away from home. And for Stephen F. Austin, they might have the best overall player in this game, as the UMass transfer has been absolutely tremendous. Keon Thompson, 18.5 points, 5 boards, 4.5 assists, shoots about 32.5% from 3. Nurkovic has been able to shoot 39% from 3, 9.5 points per game. Cam Burton, he's a little bit of a 3-point shooting specialist, 8 points, shoots 45% from 3-point range. For this Stephen F. Austin team, though, they are themselves outside the top 240 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, dominant on the offensive glass, top 40 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage, or a top 30 team in terms of taking care of the ball. Country average in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but with Incarnate Word having a few turnover woes, the Stephen F. Austin team doesn't put as much pressure on you. I think that they have the goods to be able to hold in this game, and I do think that both teams are going to grab quite a few second and third chances, but I do think that it's just slow enough for the under in this spot because both of these teams outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. So made a total of 143.5. I'm in on the under, and 8+ does become my buy point on the Word. 306.511, 306.512. Northwestern St on the road against UT Rio Grande Valley. The Vaqueros of UT Rio Grande Valley, 9.5 to 10.5 point favorites. So on this game, 136.5. Set my line at 10.5. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 10 with Grande Valley. Now for Grande Valley, just one of the most wackadoo home and road splits I've ever seen. They're averaging about 10 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. Like, I really don't get it. For this Grande Valley team, in games played away from home, they shoot 40.8% from 3 points compared to 30.7 at home. Like, I do think that starts to iron out just a little bit here. Now, I don't think that Grande Valley is going to shoot 40+% from 3 points or anything like that, but I do think that they're going to be able to figure it out on offense, as you've got a trio of guys that have given you between 10.6 and 13.5 points per game. Corey Cotton, Marvin McGee, Phil Brankovic. Brankovic throws in there about 4 boards, just under 2 assists per contest. Cotton gives you about 2.5 assists, a steal, and a block per contest, and shoots 40% from 3. McGee's that top 3-point shooter at 44%, and then you got Julian Gomez also shooting 44% from the outside, throws in there 7.5 points per game. It is a Grande Valley team that's had a little bit of a tough time with turnovers, as really both of these teams have. Both of these teams hovering right around about 255th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Neither defense really generates turnovers. Northwestern St 170th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Grande Valley about 225th, but it's a Grande Valley team that has become a top 100 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis because they have been able to do a really good job with regards to their overall shooting percentage defense. This is a Grande Valley team that is right now allowing teams to shoot from 3-point range only about 30.5%. That's a top 35 mark in the country. They're a top 100 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and Northwestern State has been getting land basic from 3-point range away from home, 37.5%. That's outside the top 3 in all of college basketball. Northwestern State, away from home, they do shoot 33.7% from 3. That is a top 175 mark in the country, but they're going to get absolutely pounded down low as they are allowing teams to grab 33.3%. Their misses as an offensive rebound away from home. That's outside the top 315 in the country. So you only have one player on the roster that gives you over 3.8 rebounds per game. Williams, 10 points, 8.3 rebounds per game. He's been solid down low, but you've got absolutely nothing else. Now you have to like what Izzy Miles brings to the table. 39% 3-point shooter, 10 points per contest. Mike Thomas shoots for this team right around about 38% for 3, 17.5 points per contest. But still, with Northwestern State, the way that they have really been giving it up from the outside, I do think that Grand Valley is going to be able to find some good looks. It's a Grand Valley team that has been pretty solid in terms of getting to the free throw line. They do shoot 75.5% at the free throw line as well. So I do think that Grand Valley finds a way to be able to get the job done here. I set my total at 142.5. I like the overhand with Grand Valley. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 10 with them. 36-5-13, 36-5-14. McNeese is on the road against Nicholls. Nicholls is a underdog here of 11 to 11.5 points. So it's game 144.5 to 145.5. Maybe by line 12.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This McNeese team has just been amazing at generating turnovers. Numero uno. In terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis in games played away from home, teams are turning the ball over on 21.9% of their possessions, and have a Nicholls team that they themselves have been really good in terms of generating turnovers. Nicholls is 17th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. So I do think that you get very much a sloppy Joe sort of game here. I set my total at a 142.5. I'm going to be in on the under. Here's what separates this McNeese team. If they don't generate turnover, they're so competent in terms of being able to guard the 3-point line and being able to guard inside, and for Nicholls, they just are not. With McNeese, they allow you to shoot about 32.9% from 3-point. That's not amazing, but that's a top 125 mark in the country. Nicholls is allowing teams to shoot more like 34.7% from 3-point. That's outside the top 200 there. And then if you look at the opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, and that's big because McNeese is shooting less than 29% from 3-point range when they're away from home. It really takes a big giant dive, but they're still very solid on the inside. They're a top 50 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage as well. Nicholls, in games played at home, teams shoot 59.9% on their 2-point shots. That is the second worst mark in all of college basketball. So they are getting absolutely pounded there. And for McNeese, you just have all sorts of versatility for this team. You have 1 or 2 returners from a season ago, Javon Garcia, Tyshawn Archie. They combine for about 25.5 points per game between the two of them, shooting 36.5% from 3. They combine for about 4.5 assists per game. Larry Johnson, no, not the former running back, has been able to give you 70 points per game. Gawari Duel just does a little bit of everything. 4 assists, 2 steals, 8 points per contest. Terrell Colbert has been able to throw in their 4 boards. So you have a lot of great depth with this team. And then for Nicholls, I really like what you're able to get out of Sincere Maloney. Sincerely has been able to give the team double figures with about 11.5 points, 4 boards, 3 assists. Doesn't necessarily pop it well from 3, but generates 2 steals per game. Jalik Dunkley, 13.5 points, a steal per contest. And if you're looking at the team that does a much better job in terms of taking care of the ball, it's McNeese. As Nicholls is about 20th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. With McNeese, they're a top 40 team. I think that wins out. And if McNeese needs to cover at the free throw line, they shoot 75.5% at the free throw line. So do you think that the turnovers keep you under? I set my total 142.5, and I'm willing to lay up to 12 with McNeese. 3-6-5-15, 3-6-5-16. Southeast Louisiana is on the road against New Orleans Privateers, who find themselves as a favorite of 7.5 points. 143.5 to 144.5 is the total. I set my line at 8.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Now, New Orleans has been terrible in terms of taking care of the ball. Outside the top 345 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. And it is a Southeast Louisiana team that has been able to generate some turnovers, and New Orleans is not. New Orleans outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And Southeast Louisiana, 53rd in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. But boy, this Southeast Louisiana team is terrible on offense. 339th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Recognize that New Orleans isn't like Masterville at 231st, but man, they're much better there. And it's a New Orleans team that should be able to do a relatively good job on the inside. And that's going to be big in this game because Southeast Louisiana shoots less than 30% for 3. They're a bottom 15 team in the country with Southeast Louisiana. They're about 157th in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. New Orleans, they are 66th, and with Southeast Louisiana just not being able to figure out anyone that's able to pop it and lock it from 3-point range, that really puts them at a big disadvantage. They've only got 2 guys that are giving you double figures right now, as Jeremy Elise, 10.8 points, 4.5 boards per contest. Isaiah Gaines throws in their 6.5 boards, 10.5 points per contest, and right now with Gaines, he's the lone guy on the roster. It gives you over 5.5 rebounds per game. It is a Southeast Louisiana team that is also shooting just 68.2% at the free throw line, and this is a New Orleans team that isn't shy of putting you on the free throw line, and it's a Southeast Louisiana team that, in terms of fouls committed on a per possession basis, are in the top 75 in the country. And New Orleans, the way that they're able to get a lot of their offense going is by shooting about 75% at the free throw line. They're a top 25 team in terms of free throw attempts per game. Colton Benson shoots 38% from 3, 16.5 points per contest, shoots 92% the free throw line. Ja'Cavion Buckley does turn the ball over well over 4 times per game, but 5 boards, 5.5 assists, 14 points. So he does a nice job helping out there, and then they're going to dominate the post with MJ Thomas, give you 7.5 boards, 11 points per game. Churchill Abis, 2 blocks, 5.5 boards, 8.5 points per game. Do think that New Orleans, despite the turnover issues, they find a way to get the job done in a game that I think is going to be a little bit sloppier, but should be very up-tempo. New Orleans, 83rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, so set a total of 144.5. Willing to take the 143.5 to the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 8 here. With New Orleans, 306-517, 306-518. You've got East Texas A&M on the road against Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi, 7.5 point favorites. Totals between 137.5 to 138.5. I like the under. I set my total at 134.5. You have a Corpus Christi team has been very good in terms of generating turnovers. In terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, this team is in the top 40 in all of college basketball, 38th, and you got an East Texas A&M team that's neither here nor there with that regard, but East Texas A&M is having all sorts of issues taking care of the ball. 328th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Not to say Corpus Christi has been much better at 301st, and these are two very inefficient offenses. With Corpus Christi, 313th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 324th with their 2-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, you've got yourself an East Texas A&M team that's 340th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, despite the fact that you've got G&I Hunt, who he's so old he was part of that Oregon State Elite A team, right now leading the way with about 5 assists, 11 points per game. I do like what Ronnie Harrison, the transfer from Tarleton, has been able to bring you a steal, 15 points, 6 boards, only shoots about 31% from 3, and for East Texas A&M, they are shooting just 32.5% from the outside. They've been well outside the top 200 with their 2-point shooting percentage. They just don't grab any sort of second and third chances either. This team is well outside the top 200 with regards to their overall offensive rebound percentage and just overall rebounding. They're a bottom 30 team in the country. Meanwhile, you've got a Corpus Christi team that has been a top 125 team with a rebound percentage. Sheldon Williams throws in there 11.5 points, 7 boards per contest. You've been able to get about 5 boards, 6 points per game out of Cedric Everin. I know that he's been dealing with a little bit of injury, but he should be good to go in this game. You've had Nicholas Shunbaino be able to give you about 12 points. He shoots 41% from 3-point, comes on over from Denver, so he's been able to give this team a little bit of a spark there. As for Corpus Christi, they're shooting about 34.5% from 3-point overall for the season, just there above 35% here in conference play. They do shoot it poorly at the free throw line. It's 67.5%, so if you have issues with them covering, that's a big reason why. But with the way that they do such a nice job in terms of generating turnovers, they've also been really good in terms of guarding the arc as well. Teams are shooting less than 30.5% from 3-point against them. That's the top 50 mark in the country. I think that it becomes a slog, and I think the Corpus Christi, even for their lack of offensive efficiency, they get the job done. I set my line at 8.5. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 8 with Corpus Christi, and like the under, so I told 134.5, and we're not things up with 306-519, 306-520. Houston Christian plays those to Lamar. Lamar is a pick-em to a 1.5 point favorite draw scheme, 132.5, and I did set my total 132.5. I'm right now seeing a 131.5 out there. 132 or less is my buy point on the over, even though you've got a pair of teams that are playing very slowly. With Houston Christian, they're 353rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Lamar is right now right around about 313th, but for Lamar, this is a team that has been able to do a nice job in terms of being able to own the boards, a top 125 team with regards to rebound percentage, and for Lamar, away from home, they do shoot about 33.7% from the outside. That's a top 200 mark in the country. Houston Christian, they shoot 31.9% from 3-point, that's 286th in the country, and the way that you really solve this riddle of Lamar is by being able to pop it from 3. They're hovering right around about 300th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They've been much more stout down low, while Houston Christian has been awful down low. Right now, for Lamar, they're 71st in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Houston Christian hovering in that neighborhood about 325th, and for Houston Christian, they don't have a single guy on the roster right now that gives them over 5 rebounds per game. Mr. Marco Bethea, 9.8 points, approximately 5 rebounds per game. Kylan Green, he throws in there about 10 points, 4.5 assists, 4 boards, but he shoots a nice hearty 28.5% from 3-point. Houston Christian also outside the top 280 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. On offense, they really don't generate a ton on defense, and with this Lamar group, you've got Rob Lee, who's been able to give you 16 points. He's shooting 42% from 3. Lamar has been outside the top 225 in terms of their own ball security, and they're not great inside themselves. They're outside the top 300 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, but with the way that they've been a top 55 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, and Houston Christian just doesn't have a ton down low. You've got Braden East, 12.5 points, 9 boards for this Lamar team. Andrew Holyfield at 6'10". He pops a few threes at about 31%, 12.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. Ariel White has been able to throw in there 5 boards, a steal, about 5 to 6 points per game. I think that Lamar finds a way to be able to get the job done here, and with Lamar, they're not afraid to put you on the free throw line. They're a top 50 team in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. Houston Christian, they shoot just 70.1% at the charity stripe. So I said Lamar is a 2.5 point favorite. I'm willing to take them on this pick-em / 1.5 point line, and anything of a 132 or less in on the over, and that'll wrap things up for the Monday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Big thanks to Rocco Miller Miller does such great work over at Bracketeer.org. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GU._81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast, giving you picks and analysis on every game, every day, so I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.